There's not too many talking points weather-wise for yet another week. However, we did end the weekend on a pretty dreary note yesterday, but finally conditions started to clear up as we went into the afternoon and evening hours. But let's recap some of our rainfall totals, and you will see 48-hour rainfall totals up at the top of this graphic because we have to go back past the last 24 hours. The rain did get going a little bit before the 11 a.m. hour yesterday. All in all, we didn't see much rain to be found all across central Georgia. Some areas where you'll see some darker shades of blue were closer to about a ½ inch of rain, like up here in Macon, up in downtown Gray in Jones County, where we see 0.6 of an inch of rain. Most areas more than likely just got a 1/10 or 2 of an inch of rain, but there was one spot over here. It's actually behind one of these locations that I picked apart just in the north portion of downtown Dublin. 1 inch of rain there, but over in this little bit of a green patch, 1.5 inches of rain just to the west of Dublin and on the northern side of I-16, so a little bit closer to the Dexter area. But all in all, not too much rain, and you can see that the higher totals were found over to the west, where there's widespread green in the bottom left of your screen and some darker blues back across the state line into Alabama. So in terms of our rainfall for the month of October now, we recorded 0.12 inches of rain, just over a 1/10 of an inch of rain yesterday afternoon. And that makes for the third day that we've actually seen recorded rain at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. We have to go all the way back to October 5th and October 6th for the last 2 days that we did record some rainfall. 0.57 inches of rain. That's our grand total for the month of October thus far. Still well below where we typically are in the month of October, which isn't very much, just over 2 inches of rain. But overall, anything that's come through in the way of a weather system that's brought something in the form of rain chances hasn't really sent us heavy rain and hasn't really sent us some long-lasting rain. So that's why our totals continue to be maybe about a fourth of the way there in terms of where we should be on average. And it looks like we're going to be nowhere near that record set back in 1959, especially given that the next week ahead in time does look like a relatively dry stretch of weather. So here's a reminder about where the drought monitor does stand as of last week's update. We didn't see too much change, just mainly areas of this moderate drought and tan, and then this more orange color, the severe drought, expanded farther over to the east. We now see areas like Pike County, western Upson County, the western edge of Taylor County included in a severe drought. And just past that, we see the moderate drought stretching into portions of Monroe County, all of Lamar County, the eastern side of Upson and Taylor counties, and then kind of meandering over in the western portion of Crawford County. This down here, obviously more widespread moderate drought conditions, but that was as of the update 2 weeks ago in time. We didn't really see any change to that, but it's a good likelihood that if you live anywhere here in central Georgia, you're more than likely just in some abnormally dry conditions. So Milledgeville, Macon, Warner Robins, Perry, over into portions of Twiggs County, back into Wilkinson, Sandersville over in Washington County, Sparta up in Hancock County, and Forsyth does still find themselves in those abnormally dry conditions in the yellow shade. We'll get another update to this drought monitor on Thursday this week, but it will take up all the data that we've received as of tomorrow. So it takes them a little bit of time to gather all the data to see if any of those dry conditions have improved. I do expect, once again, some of the drought conditions to expand and maybe some of the abnormally dry conditions that we do see present in this yellow to expand into more so a moderate drought all across central Georgia, given we haven't really had anything in the way of considerable rainfall to put a dent in the dry conditions. So a mostly dry week is going to be ahead. We do have a few rain chances to talk about, but once again, they are relatively low. And speaking of the word low, morning low temperatures, they will be in the 40s all week. You probably were surprised when you walked outside this morning. We even saw some upper 30s. We saw a 38-degree mark in downtown Dublin this morning. Could we have more of that in store as we head throughout the rest of your work week? Plenty of sunshine will be the common denominator. Let's go ahead and go over your full forecast. Starting out with our current conditions, where it's nothing but blue sky all across central Georgia. A very pleasant scene, but also now that we're starting to approach the midday hour, you can really get a good glimpse of the color of the grass in areas like downtown Dublin, Warner Robins just off Cohen Walker Drive here, and down at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. Well, there's plenty of brown color in all of those grassy areas that we do see. Downtown Dublin looks like they've been running the sprinklers at the right time, maybe in the early morning and the evening time frame, which once again, that's the time that you want to water your plants and you want to set your sprinklers for to limit the amount of evaporation that can occur. But overall, that grass probably has a bit of a crunchy feel and sound to it when you're walking across it. We definitely could use some rain here. Here's a look at your temperature map, which we continue to have a bit of trouble with. It didn't really have colors on this graphic like we normally do see as of this morning. I don't know if that's attributed to the Amazon server outage or not, but we've seen the colors pop up a couple of times. But right now, as it stands, we just see the numbers all across central Georgia, and everyone from 61 to 64 degrees at the warmest. Plenty of mid 60s, or low 60s rather, I should say, with a few mid 60s mixed in downtown Macon and down in Vidalia and Cordele and Unadilla. Actually, now that I'm getting a glimpse at it, I don't know if these are updating on me in real time, but I just saw a couple more 60s than when I first took a look. So 64 in Macon, pretty similar to the temperature over to the west in Montgomery, Alabama, pretty similar to the easternmost temperature in the United States, or at least in the near southeast over in Charleston. 79 at the warmest in Orlando and Houston, and before taking it down to an 81 degree mark down in Laredo, Texas. So overall, those Gulf Coast areas, they're holding on to a bit more moisture. Areas farther over to the west, back in Texas, of course, are hovering a bit warmer than us. So we're very thankful that we're seeing some of the cooler and drier air really impact our forecast after the passage of yesterday's frontal boundary. Here's a look at your dew point temperatures, where you will see widespread low 40s and upper 30s. Take a look at that, 38 and 39 degree dew points in Butler and in Thomaston. The typical pattern that we have seen is as the temperatures begin to warm up, we start to see a steady increase in those dew point temperatures once that does happen. But these dew point temperatures have stayed consistent in the low 40s all throughout the morning so far. But the big indication with this graphic is no shades or no faint areas of that light green that you always hear me say so often. We are now transitioning into this very dry category. There's almost no humidity in your forecast as we go into the mid-morning hours. Here's a look at the humidity levels all across the southeast, and we are not alone. Alabama completely dry, South Carolina completely dry. The only areas where we can actually see some form of a light green color are going to be on the eastern coast of Florida, down in northeastern Florida, close to Jacksonville, and then down there on the toe of the boot in Louisiana, pretty close to New Orleans. Overall, it's a very dry atmosphere, just giving you an idea of how widespread the post-frontal impacts are spanning all across the southeast United States. The winds and the wind gusts are a bit of a story. You may have noticed yesterday afternoon and evening. I know I definitely did when I was taking Aspen on a walk yesterday evening. It was a bit of a breezy into the day. That's typically what happens when you get some frontal boundaries that pass through, and especially one so profound like what we did see yesterday. You can have some breezy conditions settle in, but those winds are expected to continue to subside as we transition into the afternoon later on today. But right now, still trying to hold on to a steady breeze in some areas, anywhere from a 5-mile-per-hour wind in areas like Milledgeville, Warner Robins, down in Eastman, up to 10, 12, maybe even 13 miles per hour. Down in areas like Butler, Macon, Americus, and Cordele. It does look like those shades of that blue color are going to be farther down to the south in the southwest here in central Georgia. But like I said, that is not going to be long lasting, and it's not going to make things feel maybe a little bit cooler. As of this morning, if you did have a steady breeze present, it probably did help the temperatures feel just a tad bit lower than they already were, and they were already pretty low. So yesterday's numbers, 58 for a high temperature. We were above average by about 6 degrees. And that does make sense because cloud cover started to enter during the nighttime hours or the early morning hours on Sunday before the rain finally got going. While all the cloud cover and all the rain yesterday did limit how much we warmed up. 77 for a high temperature compared to 78, which is average this time of year. 91 for a high temperature yesterday all time. That was set back in 2016, so just under 10 years ago. In 2022, 34 degrees. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of a tease about what today's Almanac did say, because I'm not sure if I necessarily included that graphic in the stream, but our record low for this morning was also set back in 2022 of 29 degrees. Yes, it was mighty chilly this morning, but but it always could be worse. And when you do have stretches of weather that aren't necessarily too pleasant, you can always put it in perspective and compare it to years of the past, or you can compare it to other areas of the country. Now, we did record a little bit of rain yesterday, like I said, just over 1/10 of an inch. Your year departure of rain still really close to 3 inches, but really right there around the 2 3/4 of an inch mark above where we should be. That number just continues to steadily decline, and it looks like that number will get even lower throughout the work week this week. Sunrise yesterday, 7:42. We probably didn't necessarily get a good image of that sunrise, but sunset you might have gotten a glimpse of at 6:57 p.m. yesterday. So speaking of those sunrise and sunset times, continuing to throw you this reminder that November 2nd is going to be an important date. So that's going to be a little under 2 weeks away now. That is going to be our time change when we fall back. So your sunrise will get an hour earlier, back before the 7 a.m. hour at 6:53 a.m. But your sunset is going to be before 6 p.m. at 5:42. Your hours of daylight continuing to slim down as we head into this last 2 months of the calendar year. 10 hours and 49 minutes of daylight on November 2nd. That window continues to get slimmer and slimmer all the way until December 21st, where we will have our shortest day of the calendar year in terms of those hours of daylight, just under 10 hours of daylight at 9 hours and 59 minutes. But you may ask, Alex, why did you include December 1st? And you will see it at the bottom right there. That's actually going to be our earliest sunset. So even though the sunset will be a little bit later on the first day of winter, it will still be the shortest day. We will actually look at that sunrise to steadily get later and later, but 5:27 p.m. is the earliest that the sun will set. It's really the month of November and the month of December that you're going to start to have those dusk hours as you're making your evening commute home from work, maybe already being dark depending on what time that you do get off of work. Maybe say you get off at 6 or 7 p.m. It is already going to be dark outside as the sun will continue to set earlier and earlier. But the only good thing about this time change that will be happening, you did hear me refer to it as fall back. That means that you will wake up that Sunday morning on November 2nd feeling a bit more refreshed because you're going to gain an hour of sleep during the overnight hours. The clock will go to 1:59 in the morning, and then it will jump back to 1 a.m. So if you are planning on maybe having a late night in light of at least just getting an hour extra of sleep, that's what you will see on those digital clocks that do update automatically with the time change. But it also serves as a reminder that, hey, when you wake up on November 2nd, it's going to say it's an hour later than what it actually is. So you're going to have to go ahead and make those manual changes in the settings. So your forecast for your Monday afternoon, nothing but sunny skies. I don't think there will be anything in the way of cloud cover, just given how dry our atmosphere is. We haven't seen dew point temperatures in the 30s and the 40s in quite some time. 75 for a high temperature. So yes, it continues to be below average like yesterday was. The difference is, number one, we're not going to have the humidity in the forecast like we did before the passage of that frontal boundary yesterday. And number two, you're pairing up below average temperatures with plenty of sunshine as opposed to the gloomy and dreary atmosphere that we did have present in light of all the rain that did try to move through ahead of that frontal boundary. So crystal clear, and yes, today finally giving us a bit of a fall feel. But are we going to hold on to this for the foreseeable future, maybe an extended period of time? Or are we just only going to see this for 2 or 3 days and then we're going to warm back up into the 80s? Well, we'll talk about that in just one moment. So your average high this time of year, you see it here in the top right of your screen, 78 degrees. That number got 1 degree cooler over the course of this past weekend. And the further and further that number goes down into the 70s, yes, that just means that the 70s are going to be a lot more profound and you're going to start to see them for high temperatures a lot more often. So here's a look at your hour by hour temperatures. I guess I should have showed this before the today graphic, but obviously going up into the low to mid 70s between 3, 4, and 5 o'clock. And yes, my high temperature is a little bit higher than the 74 degree mark, but remember, we've been talking about it the last couple of weeks that we typically have seen this undershoot what the actual high temperature is. But I think the biggest change that you will notice, if many of you have been having an outdoor lunch, say when temperatures are in the low to mid 70s right at the noon hour, it's still going to be a little bit cool. 66 degrees by the noon hour. Remember, our warmest temperature so far was sitting at 64 degrees, and we are going to be very quick to watch that temperature drop between 6 and 7 p.m. respectively. 73 degrees at 6 p.m. after the sun does set closer to the 7 p.m. hour and you start to not have as much sunlight in the sky, those numbers are more than likely going to take a dip back down into the 60s, and they're just going to continue to drop all the way until you wake up tomorrow morning. So your satellite and radar graphic, I know the temperature map wasn't exactly working in terms of maybe what we were seeing in terms of the colors on the map, but your satellite and radar image, it is crystal clear, and it will remain that way throughout the rest of today. There's barely a cloud in sight down here in the southeast United States. It looks like there's one little trail of maybe a rope cloud right there in northeast Alabama stretching up into southern Tennessee, and of course some clouds down there in the more humid areas off the coast of Florida. But going through future view, we'll just see how profound that cooler and more so that drier air will be throughout today. The wind's calming out. That's why you're not seeing anything really in the way of those wind arrows. They're kind of just moving in variable directions. But overall, today will be crystal clear. Now tomorrow does have some changes in it. You'll start to see some cloud cover and a few very spotty light showers approach from the northwest. That's going to continue to move through as we go into the afternoon and evening time frame. It looks like rain tries to organize, but overall we don't really see too much humidity in the forecast. It's a very dry atmosphere. You have to have moisture in your forecast in order for a frontal boundary to sprout widespread rain like we saw yesterday. And take a look at those timings or those timestamps that we do have. Later on Tuesday into very early, more so just the overnight hours into early Wednesday morning. That's when this frontal boundary will pass through. Our temperatures are going to be a whole lot cooler than say maybe what they would be at 3, 4, or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So those afternoon highs are going to be a little bit warmer than today, but that frontal boundary will pass through and set up some pretty breezy conditions into Wednesday. This will be important to remember that as we go into the next couple of graphics. Future view goes all the way out to 1 a.m. on Thursday as of right now. So over the next 3 days, the big highlight will be the brief warm-up, 75 into 82 as we go into Tuesday afternoon, but then the rain chances mainly just for the nighttime frame, I think, on Tuesday. And if you do see any rain, it's just going to be a very spotty and a very light shower in nature. 49 degrees for a morning low on Wednesday as opposed to 42 for today and tomorrow. That's because we'll have some clouds in the forecast with that frontal boundary moving through, and anything that we have in the form of clouds will typically slow your cool down that you do see on a nightly basis. 75 for a high temperature, and once again bringing back those crystal clear skies. Wednesday is going to be a whole lot like today, just maybe a little bit warmer as we kickstart the day. So taking a look at your humidity map, we actually do see some areas of light green, but light green is not too much moisture. This is getting into the not bad territory. Typically, your more widespread rain chances and heavier rain chances, thunderstorm chances are going to be associated with this dark green box right here. So your dew point temperatures, they might see a brief increase ahead of that frontal boundary, but then as we go into the overnight hours, early Wednesday morning, we start to see all of that light green pushed out of the picture again. So this frontal boundary isn't going to bring too much in the way of rain chances, but it will reinforce the cool and dry atmosphere that we'll have in place as we go into your Thursday morning. Take a look at that. Dew point temperatures back in the upper 30s as you're waking up and walking out the door on Thursday. So remember when I was saying, remember the breezy conditions that will be in place on Wednesday. We're talking about maybe something in the form of fire danger statements. I did show you the drought monitor, so obviously it's a very dry atmosphere at the surface and in all of the soil. Now this isn't an actual fire danger statement issued as of right now. This is just one from last year, but I wanted to give you an idea about what it will say. Any fires that could develop could also spread very rapidly, and outdoor burning is going to be strongly discouraged unless you follow the proper precautions. The National Weather Service has highlighted the risk for seeing some of these fire danger statements specifically across central Georgia into Wednesday and Thursday. So make sure that you are using all of the proper precautions if you have to participate in some of that controlled burning, because it's a very dry atmosphere. We won't have much humidity in the forecast, so typically this happens when you have breezy conditions and some low relative humidity, and this is an idea of what this one last year did say. Relative humidity right there around 20% and some dry vegetation. Checklist, we've checked off all the boxes. We have all those present ingredients as we go into the day on Wednesday, and if the breeze does hang around into Thursday, we will once again very likely see one of these issued, but that will be something we'll be on the lookout for as we go throughout the midweek. In terms of your morning low temperatures, one of these is not like the others, and that is this 49-degree mark on Wednesday morning. But like we were just talking about, that's just going to be because of some of the cloud cover moving in ahead of that frontal boundary. That cloud cover will slow the cool down that we do see on a daytime to nighttime basis. Each of the rest of your next 5 days going to start out with a nice brisk chill in the air. I would even get into classifying this as cold, low 40s, especially those areas in the upper 30s. You're going to want to make plans to whatever sweater or pullover or layering that you grabbed this morning to have that present throughout each day of the next 5 days. Your afternoon high temperatures, we'll have that one day tomorrow afternoon in the low 80s. Then we'll return to that fall feeling weather and finally getting our afternoon high temperatures on page with those below average morning low temperatures. We've seen our fair share of days that have started out somewhere in the 40s, but your afternoon highs have still been hovering somewhere in the 80s over recently. Well, it looks like we have a good stretch of the 70s as we roll towards the weekend. And in terms of your muggy meter, we'll see a brief rebound in the humidity. I think that point right there that you do see for Tuesday will go up a little bit higher into this more comfortable box. But overall, we'll start to see that drastic drop off once again, that reinforcement of the drier air as we head into Wednesday. And then we'll keep the very, very dry air in the forecast all the way through your work week and into the weekend. Before Sunday, we might see a little bit better moisture content in the atmosphere. So speaking of your weekend forecast, let's go throughout the rest of the work week. Thursday and Friday, maybe some passing clouds, but overall nothing in the way of rain is going to be on the horizon. 7 p.m. on Friday, looking like another great football Friday night all across the gridiron. Now we do see some rain chances popping up to the west of us as we head into Saturday, but it does look like Saturday is still going to be a nice and clear forecast for you all across the state of Georgia. It's once we get to Sunday that some of those rain chances try to move in to the state of Georgia. Now, does this scenario play out? Right now, the GFS seems to think so, but the European is more so just some scattered showers all about the southeast United States. We will continue to see what these models say on a day-by-day basis as we go throughout the work week. As we get this within the range of our shorter range and higher resolution models, it will give us a better idea of our rain chances, but right now it is just an entire cluster right now. It is just a messy picture all across the East United States. No one model really agreeing with the other, but hopefully these come into better agreement as we get closer and closer to the end of the weekend and into the beginning of next week. So let's talk some tropics. We actually do have one talking point. Like we continue to tell you, hurricane season, the activity is really slowing down and ramping down, but it's not completely over until we get to November 30th and cross over into the month of December. We do have a tropical wave down here in the Eastern Caribbean, highlighted by this red X. So it's to the west of the Lesser Antilles, down to the south of Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands. Right now, it's a disorganized group of showers and some thunderstorms, but this is expected to continue to move into the Caribbean, and it's going to move into a very conducive environment. Right now, it's actually moving at about 15 to 20 miles per hour, so that's a pretty decent speed for anything in the form of a tropical system. Doesn't necessarily look like it's moving too quick on the satellite imagery, but it is going to start to slow down over the next couple of days and start to interact with that warm water down in the Caribbean Sea. That's why it does have pretty medium chances of developing over the next 2 days at 50%, but high chances of developing past that 48-hour window. I do expect our next named storm to form over the course of the next few days, maybe by Wednesday per se. But as of right now, it still remains really nothing to be concerned about whatsoever. This is deemed Invest 98L as of right now. So taking a look at that, that means that Invest criteria does give us at least some spaghetti plots according to the GFS model, and there is no one solution that you could really believe over the other. You can see pretty good agreement that this system will continue to move over to the west over the next couple of days, maybe try to curve up to the north a little bit. But then there's a lot of plots that are going over Hispaniola and going back out into the Atlantic Ocean. But there's your fair share of models that have this kind of sticking around and hanging around in the Caribbean. This is a little bit closer to our neck of the woods than most of those storms that we've seen well out into the Atlantic Ocean. So it does warrant some monitoring, and we can't necessarily rule out any U.S. impacts as of right now, but overall it does look like we're not seeing any impacts here in the United States from the latest data that we have received. It just remains something that we will continue to keep a close eye on. So obviously it's a big topic on social media with many people posting about it. Don't go believe what one individual model run 300 hours out in advance does say. Like I always tell you, you don't know what you're going to eat for breakfast in about a week and a half, so you shouldn't go believing what a forecast does say about a week and a half out in advance. So in terms of your names, if this system does get its act together, which I do expect it to do over the next couple of days, I expect tropical depression or tropical storm Melissa to form, which is going to be our M-name storm. And just to put this in reference, from last year's hurricane season, about a week and a half ago was the anniversary of Hurricane Milton down in Florida. That was the M-name storm for last year's hurricane season. Well, we're definitely running behind the pace of last year's hurricane season because we haven't even crossed off the M name just yet. I did mention to you that hurricane season is starting to slow down, at least in terms of the frequency of storms that we normally typically see. October 20th, right here, this white dashed line that you can see along the x-axis, you can see that the frequency really dropping down after this last little peak right here towards the late middle portion of the month of October. So the frequency of definitely hurricanes does go down well into the bottom of the y-axis, but in terms of just named storms in general, which is going to be your red box, it is a little bit higher as of right now. But really, as we transition into the month of November, tropical activity doesn't necessarily go away, but you will start to see named storms a lot less frequently. So here's a look at your 7-day forecast. Lots and lots of 70s. So finally, an extended period of that fall-like weather. It looks like that fall-like weather is here to stay for the foreseeable future. This last full work week of the month of October, as we go into Halloween next Friday, one lone day that will be a little bit warmer than the rest, and that's going to be tomorrow afternoon, where we crawl up into the low 80s. But the thing that shocked me the most this morning, take a look at your morning low temperature, 42 into 82 in the afternoon. That is a 40-degree temperature increase between your morning low and your afternoon high temperature. We are maintaining that 10% chance of a very brief and light shower as we go into the nighttime hours, but right now don't put too much stock in those rain chances. It's very likely that that comes when you're already winding down for the end of your Tuesday workday and you're already hitting the hay, you're already fast asleep. You may just walk outside, see a couple of water droplets on your windshield and say, hey, it did rain a little bit, but that's definitely not going to improve anything in the way of our dry criteria that we've been under. Then we'll get that reinforcement of cooler and drier air. So high temperatures in the mid to upper 70s as we head all the way into the weekend. I think the increase in cloud cover as we head into Friday and Saturday is going to be a very beneficial factor for at least keeping our high temperatures a little bit lower than, say, maybe the upper 70s near 80 degrees. And you can also see this reciprocated with the fact that your morning low temperatures go into the upper 40s and eventually the low 50s as you start out Sunday morning. But right now, the long-range models are trying to hint at the rain chances being in the second half of your Sunday. We'll continue to get a better idea as we go day by day throughout the work week. But as of right now, continue to enjoy this beautiful fall-like stretch of weather. I know myself, for one, I am definitely going to enjoy this. Aspen is going to have plenty of walks out there in the neighborhood throughout this work week. And if you're planning on doing the same with your furry friend, you cannot dial up a better weather forecast each and every afternoon. So that's where your weather stands as of this Monday morning. We'll continue to provide you with an update day by day at 11 a.m. here on 13 WMAZ Plus with a look at your extended forecast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then tomorrow.